Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Crafting and Crime Daily. I'm your host, Rebecca, and this is the show where I recap live trials. So you have something to listen to while you're diamond painting, crocheting, Legos, doing Legos. Those are my Lego flowers. Whatever it is you're doing and you like to have something to listen to while you're doing it, here you go. So today is the sentencing. That's what we're going to talk about, the sentencing of Nicolae Miu. And you're like, wait a minute, that sounds familiar. I'll remind you who that is after this. Hello, welcome back, everybody. So, Nicolae Miu, 54 years old now, back in 2022 in Wisconsin, he decided to take out a knife. He brought a knife to a fist fight, basically. This happened on Apple River. Now, I'm saying Apple River, that might jog your memory. This is the video footage where they're tubing, everybody's tubing on the river, the Carlson family, the teenagers, Nicolae and his family. Well, what I think happened is Nicolae is out of his tube and he's looking for something in the water. And these teenagers are taunting him. And he didn't take too kindly to that, which resulted in some very poor decision making on his part that day. Eventually, he takes out a knife. He stabs a boy named Isaac, a teenager named Isaac. He dies. He injures several other teenagers, two of which would not have survived absent the tubers that were there on the lake that helped keep him going until EMS got there, and then the first responders saved their lives. And then there was one that was not so injured physically, but mentally. They probably all have PTSD from what went down that day. Nicholas flees, gets back in his tube and just heads on down the river. They catch him when he's getting into his vehicle to go home that day. He doesn't stop to render aid, nothing. Anyway, so he's been in prison for 700 and some days. So 2 years he's been in prison. And he was convicted by a jury of not intentional first-degree murder. They convicted him of a lesser included offense, which was first-degree reckless homicide, which means maybe it was a compromise verdict. I don't know. Usually lesser included offenses are compromise verdicts. But in any case, the jury did not believe that this was intentional on his part, but that it was gross negligence. I mean, he was not doing what an ordinary person would have done under same or similar circumstances that day. Now, my thought is, he's a refugee from Romania. Originally, he came over with his parents fleeing this communist country, Romania, and became a U.S. citizen. So I don't know if he's a product of, if the mindset is a product of that. I don't know. I don't even carry a knife, much less, I don't know. In any case, the victims all appeared for victim impact statements, including Isaac's family, his parents and friends, and other members of this event that were injured gave impact statements. The defense attorney got up and he spoke, and very eloquently, I thought, this is not a bad man. He just had a horrible day and made some horrible decisions that day. But listen to what the judge has to say. But first, before we even get to the judge, Nicolae, this is one of those cases where we actually do get to hear from the defendant. Usually there's an appeal pending, and there probably is in this case too, but he chose to make a statement. And I don't think it hurts him at all, but I think it shows that he does have some compassion for what occurred in this case. Take a listen.
Mr. Miu, this is your opportunity to make a statement, or if you wish, to offer any reason why I should not impose a sentence today. Would you like to make a statement?
Judge, he's written out a statement to me. I had it in hand. I printed it just for easier. I think he wants to read it and then I'll submit it to the court. So it's just a part of the record.
Certainly. Mr. Miu.
Do you want to stand? Okay.
Yeah.
Read it to the court.
All right. Dear parents, family, and friends of Isaac, I would like to start by letting you know how deeply sorrowed I have been. I am, and I will always be, for the real fact that Isaac is not with you anymore, and that I was directly involved in his very tragic and unimaginable death at such an early age. I never meant for this tragedy to occur. My soul is broken. My heart is very heavy. And I will never be the same carrying such a heavy burden and sorrow. I pray to God for forgiveness, compassion, and love for everyone affected directly and indirectly by the outcome of this tragic event. I'm hoping that you appreciate how much I'm sorry for the outcome of those events. I'm very sorry.
So we'll have that marked as Exhibit 3.
So what you saw in that footage was me diamond painting. Yes, I'm diamond painting. That's my event painting. We're doing an event called The Great Escape 2024. This is our third year of doing this event. And tonight we're going to be giving away surprises in our live. Listen up for the details of that later. So now I want you to hear from the judge and listen to some of the things he talks about. You know, he talks about the purpose of sentencing someone. Is it for rehabilitation? Is it for punishment? And how do you balance that? You know, you've got a guy here, and he said he's got no criminal record. He doesn't associate with criminals. He's never committed any crimes. He's not an alcoholic. He doesn't have a mental health condition. He's educated. He's financially secure, stable home, stable family. He knows right from wrong. We don't need to teach this man anything or, you know, treat any addiction or mental problem he has. So now, do we want to punish him for the worst day of his life? Well, I think we have to give him some sort of, you know, sentence to hold him accountable for what he did, because that's what the public expects. That's what the victims expect. So the prosecution had asked for 60 years. 45 years for the first-degree reckless homicide that he was found guilty of. And then there were other charges he was found guilty of as well, associated with the other victims, lesser charges. None of which, all of them reckless. So altogether, he was facing 40, I don't know, a long time, 60 plus years. So the state was asking for a 60-year sentence, followed by 20 years of probation. Now he's 54. That's a life sentence. And you heard the judge say, listen, or you're going to hear the judge say, I don't want to, you know, the jury, you know, maybe they intended, maybe they didn't. I don't know if they knew what the sentencing would be, but they didn't intend for him to have the highest charge and have a life sentence. So he doesn't want to sentence him to life. So here is the sentencing. If I didn't show it already. Anyway, here it is.
Mr. Nelson submitted numerous letters from Mr. Miu's personal friends and coworkers. I read all of those. I also read the relevant portions of the file, including the complaint, the jury instructions, and the verdict. In a moment, I will pronounce a sentence that I believe is just and fair. When deciding on a sentence, I must consider the gravity of the offense, including the effect on the victims, I must consider Mr. Miu's character and his rehabilitative needs. I must consider the need to protect the public. The sentence must be based on the facts of the case and the law, not personal considerations, passions, or prejudices. But judges in Wisconsin have a great deal of discretion when imposing a sentence. Unlike many jurisdictions, we do not have sentencing guidelines or grids to follow. I want all of you to know that I have given this case a great deal of thought. I take my responsibility seriously. There is nothing more difficult or more solemn than imposing a sentence on another human being. As far as the gravity of the offense, the jury has spoken. Any efforts to relitigate this case are simply without merit. I firmly believe that the American criminal justice system is the best ever devised. It's not perfect, but I cannot think of a system of justice that is better at finding the truth while preserving the rights of the accused. In this case, 12 jurors reached a unanimous verdict. These 12 jurors were selected from a panel of more than 150 people. I, along with the attorneys for both sides, chose these jurors because they could be fair and impartial. The jurors came from all corners of our great county. They came from all walks of life. They were men, they were women, they were young, they were old. They listened to 8 days of intense trial testimony. They examined dozens of exhibits. They deliberated for 8 hours. In the end, they reached a unanimous verdict and found beyond a reasonable doubt that Mr. Miu was guilty of reckless homicide, reckless endangerment, and battery. Now, there are 2 key takeaways from this jury's verdict that I want to mention. First, the jury rejected the state's claim that Mr. Miu intended to kill Isaac Schumann or the surviving stabbing victims. In other words, the jury rejected the most serious crimes that would have sent Mr. Miu to prison for the rest of his life. Second, the jury rejected Mr. Miu's claims of self-defense. That means Mr. Miu did not reasonably believe that he was preventing or terminating an unlawful interference with his person, or he did not reasonably believe the force used was necessary to prevent imminent death or great bodily harm to himself. This jury found Mr. Miu guilty of reckless homicide and 4 counts of reckless endangerment. These crimes are serious. They mean that Mr. Miu did not think about the consequences of his behavior and that he showed utter disregard for life when he stabbed 5 people. For that, he will be held accountable, but the court sentence must reflect the reality that it was reckless conduct that the jury found him guilty of, not intentional conduct, which is punishable much more harshly. In weighing the gravity of the offense, I consider the impact these crimes have had on the victims. The battery to Madison Cohen was unjustified. While she did not suffer any permanent physical injuries, she has mentally suffered over this entire ordeal. She described to the PSI author the toll this case has taken and continues to take on her. This offense has devastated Isaac Schumann's parents and stepfather. No parent should have to endure the loss of a child. They have had to cope with the senseless death of a loved one while enduring the weight of the criminal justice system that can be slow, confusing, and sometimes frustrating to victims. To you and to your family, there are probably no words that I can say today that will alleviate your grief. But I would be remiss for not expressing my sincere condolences to all of you. I am sorry for your loss and what you've had to endure. Although it must have been difficult, I appreciate each of you speaking today and sharing a glimpse into Isaac's life and who he was. It sounds like he was a wonderful person, bright young man who had an unlimited future. And for that, we in this community have lost. A.J. Martin and Riley Madison would have died on that riverbank had it not been for the swift action of law enforcement and EMTs and other tubers who helped to treat their wounds and stabilize their condition. They had long hospital stays, but they were very fortunate to receive high-quality medical treatment that restored their health. But we heard from them about the toll this matter has taken on their health, their mental psyche, and their prospects for the future. Anthony Carlson and Dante Carlson's wounds were less severe, but the risk to life was still present, obviously because the knife was directed into their torso near vital organs. But they fortunately have survived. Each of these surviving stabbing victims suffered permanent physical disfigurement. That can't be overlooked. And we've heard from A.J. Martin just about how that disfigurement can affect one's life. In assessing Mr. Miu's character, I must consider his conduct on July 30. Mr. Miu's crimes were the product of circumstance, not intent. Mr. Miu was not looking to cause trouble or hurt anyone, but he made a series of very poor decisions. When confronted with words and boorish taunts and insults, Mr. Miu drew a knife and he struck Madison Cohen. That quickly culminated in senseless, lethal violence. He left the scene, leaving his victims to die, while casually floating past them and emergency workers as if nothing had happened. He nearly reached his car. He nearly escaped the jurisdiction before law enforcement arrested him. These are terrible acts that form an indelible stain on his character. There is more to Mr. Miu than his worst acts. I can tell Mr. Miu has taken this case very seriously. He has been appropriate and respectful in his demeanor in court. I sense that he carries a heavy burden too. I imagine he is disheartened at the prospect of prison and the uncertainty of his future. But I also sense that Mr. Miu feels genuine sadness and remorse for what happened to his victims. I agree with the comments earlier that our criminal justice system is not designed in a way to allow people to apologize or to alleviate grief or to show respect to victims until a day like today at sentencing. That is unfortunate, but I heard Mr. Miu's words, both today and before, and I think he is sorry. Other than his conduct on July 30, Mr. Miu appears to be a quiet, nonviolent, peaceful man. He's never been in trouble before. He is loved by his family and friends. He's generous with his time. He helps others who are less fortunate or who are in need. Mr. Miu is respected in his community. Several of his personal friends and coworkers submitted letters that describe his character. Those letters were not shared in court today, but some of the most common words they use to describe Mr. Miu are kind, compassionate, friendly, loyal, respectful, and honest. Mr. Miu had to overcome great obstacles in life to achieve his place. He and his family suffered at the brutal hands of the communist regime in Romania. When he was a teenager, he and his family fled. They found asylum in the United States. Here, he adjusted to a new country, new language, new culture. He got good grades in high school. He went on to college in South Dakota. He became an engineer. He worked hard. He had a successful career. I read somewhere in my materials that the proudest moment in Mr. Miu's life was becoming an American citizen. Mr. Miu has no rehabilitative needs. That means he doesn't need rehabilitation. He has no past criminal history. He does not associate with criminals. He has never used illegal drugs. He is not an alcoholic. He has not been diagnosed with a mental health condition, although there is evidence that he's experienced PTSD from July 30 while in the jail. Mr. Miu is educated. He has vocational skills. He has life skills. He's financially secure. He has a stable home. He has positive social supports. He knows the difference between right and wrong. He doesn't need rehabilitation. I mention all of these things to acknowledge that there is a lot more to Mr. Miu than what he did on July 30. I mention these things to recognize that a fair and just sentence takes into account the complete person, not just his worst acts at his lowest moment. Despite the seriousness of Mr. Miu's crimes, the evidence does not show that he poses an imminent risk to the public. Mr. Miu underwent a compass assessment, which is an actuarial tool that measures a person's risk of committing future crimes. Not surprisingly, Mr. Miu scored low risk. He's not a career criminal. He's not a violent predator. Although Mr. Miu may not pose an imminent risk to the public does have a strong interest in holding people accountable who breach the social compact and commit crimes. It's the concept of punishment. Punishment is a sentencing objective. When a person commits a serious crime, that person forfeits rights enjoyed by the law-abiding community. The most restrictive punishments are reserved for those who commit the most serious crimes. The punishment exacts a toll on the offender because of the harm the offender caused to the victim and the community. Taking life and endangering the lives of others are two crimes that warrant significant punishment. Punishment for what Mr. Miu did, but also punishment that recognizes who he is and the circumstances of his crimes. Here, that punishment will involve the loss of liberty, because anything else would depreciate the seriousness of his crimes. So at this time, I will impose the following sentence on Mr. Miu. For count 1, I will impose a term of initial confinement of 20 years, followed by 6 years of extended supervision. For count 2, involving Anthony Carlson, 5 years initial confinement, followed by 5 years of extended supervision. Count 3, involving Dante Carlson, 5 years of initial confinement, followed by 5 years of extended supervision. Count 4, Alexander Martin, 6 years of initial confinement, followed by 5 years of extended supervision. Count 5, Riley Madison, 5 years initial confinement, followed by 5 years of extended supervision. Count 6, Madison Cohen, 270 days of jail. Mr. Miu is not eligible for challenge incarceration program or the earned release program due to his age and the nature of these offenses. The sentences on all 6 counts will run concurrent. I am imposing a concurrent sentence because Mr. Miu's conduct toward each of his victims was part of a single continuous act over a short period of time. The periods of confinement take into consideration Mr. Miu's entire behavior, not just the behavior directed at any one particular individual. The conditions of extended supervision will include the following: maintain absolute sobriety, no possession of drugs or alcohol. You shall not enter any establishment where the primary purpose is the sale of alcohol. This will include places like bars, taverns, liquor stores, beer tents, and the like. You must complete an ARTDOT assessment. You must comply with all recommendations of the Compass Assessment and the Department of Corrections. He must pay court costs and DNA surcharge on each count. He must submit a DNA sample. He may not have any contact with Isaac Schumann's family, including Elena and Danya Hernandez and Scott Schumann. He may not have contact with Alexander Martin, Riley Madison, Anthony Carlson, Dante Carlson, or Madison Cohen. He is responsible for restitution. The state must submit its restitution demand within 30 days. The defense may have 30 days thereafter to object. If there is an objection, the matter will be scheduled for a restitution hearing. Because Mr. Miu is convicted of serious felonies, he may not possess firearms. He may not possess body armor. He may not vote or hold public office until his civil rights are restored. If he were to do any of those things contrary to law, he would subject himself to additional criminal penalties. If he violates the no contact orders, he may also subject himself to additional criminal penalties. Does the state agree on the credit calculation, 732 days?
Yes.
All right, 732 days credit. Mr. Miu is remanded to the custody of the sheriff for delivery to the Dodge Reception Center. Is there anything else for today, Mr. Anderson?
No.
Mr. Nelson?
No, Judge.
All right, thank you all. We stand adjourned.
So he gets 20 years. That's it. Because all of that stuff he was talking about runs concurrent. It adds up to 47 years. But if he had said consecutive, it would have been 47 years. But he said concurrent, which means 20 years, followed by 6 years of probation. Now, I don't know if you caught it. There was a nuance there. He will not be eligible for early release because of his age. So he must serve his entire sentence, and he's already served 2 years. So he's looking at another 18 years before he gets out. And someone do the math for me. 54 and 18 is 72-ish. If I'm wrong, I know you're going to tell me I'm wrong. But me doing math on the on the sly, no, I don't do math. So that's it for the Apple River murders. Or murder. Sad. case. Very sad. And if I can find the link to the videos that I did on the Apple murder case when I covered the trial, I will link them here if you want to actually go back and refresh your memory. So have a wonderful day, everybody. I'm going to be live tonight at 6:30. Yes, tune in for the event. We're going to have Cross with Crashley as our special guest. She has a small business where she sells release papers that go on the diamond paintings. She also sells putty, and she also sells what else? Cover minders, all kinds of stuff. Anyway, she's going to be there. We're going to do some giveaways, and I'll see you guys then. Don't forget to subscribe, like, leave a comment, all that good stuff. Share, leave a super thanks. Have a wonderful weekend, everybody. Take care.